Good morning and welcome to Jasiri. Today, our conversation begins with a story that has sparked outrage across social media, governments, and women rights advocates in West and East Africa. Authorities in Ghana and Kenya are investigating and in some cases seeking extradition of a Russian national accused of secretly filming women during intimate encounters and sharing the footage online without their consent. According to the official statements, the suspect, described in media reports as a self-styled pickup artist and online blogger, allegedly used concealed cameras to record several women in both Ghana and Kenya after circulating the videos on social media platforms, raising urgent questions about consent, privacy violations, digital exploitation, and gender-based abuse.
Now, governments in both countries have responded strongly. Ghana has invited the Russian ambassador and plans to seek extradition, while Kenya has initiated cross-border cooperation to locate and hold the individual accountable. So today on Jasiri, we ask, what does this case reveal about the vulnerabilities women face online and offline? How are governments responding? And what must be done legally, culturally, and socially to protect dignity and privacy? And let's unpack the allegations and official response, and then explore deeper themes around consent, exploitation, and digital rights. Joining us now is News Central's senior international correspondent, Afua Hagan. Afua, good to see you again.
Morning. And before we get into it, don't forget to join the conversation via the WhatsApp number on the screen. We'll also be talking to a Kenyan digital creator who has taken a stance on this issue as well later on in the show. Now, Afua, this story, in truth, is wild, but it also shows us the dangers that women and girls face when it comes to unregulated and unchecked use of technology and AI. We know that officials in Ghana and Kenya have condemned the alleged conduct as a violation of privacy and personal dignity and launched investigations as well as diplomatic efforts to secure justice. So let's start from there. What exactly are the allegations against the Russian national in both Ghana and Kenya?
Well, Tolu, you nailed it. These allegations are absolutely wild. So it's thought that this individual, who you rightly described as a pickup artist, befriended different women in different public spaces. So the beach, the mall, a restaurant, exchanged numbers with them, and then arranged to meet them later on, often at a short-term let apartment, an Airbnb, that type of thing. Then, when he got them back to the apartment and they were intimate, they were filmed without their knowledge or their consent. And it's thought that that filming was done with smart glasses. You know, the glasses that have the cameras built in, the companies like Meta and Ray-Ban have used or have developed. It's thought that those smart glasses were used to record those intimate encounters. And then you have the last part of this, which is that those intimate encounters were then distributed online without the knowledge of the girls participating. Some were put behind a paywall on different social media accounts and sites like Telegram. Some were put out there on other social media sites as well for people to consume at their leisure. And the point is that the women in these videos did not know, number one, that they were being filmed, and number two, that that filming would end up in the public domain.
All right, so Afua, take us through the response of the two countries we know of right now, Kenya and Ghana. How have authorities there responded?
Well, yes, the two countries that we know of right now is quite a statement, right? Because who knows where else he could have gone? Absolutely. Okay, first of all, let's start with Ghana. So Ghana have immediately started talking about extradition and international pursuit. So Ghana's Minister for Communication, Digital Technology and Innovation, that's Samuel Nartey George, he says that the state has begun processes to seek the extradition of this individual and is fully cooperating with Interpol and any other international organizations to assist with that extradition. They've also escalated this diplomatically, so the Russian ambassador has been told about this and will be invited to an engagement as part of their investigations into this incident. And also they're talking about a trial in absentia if that is something that can be agreed. So Ghana has said that if the suspect does not return to Ghana, then authorities are prepared to build a case against him and pursue prosecution even if he's not in attendance at that trial. They're also warning the public, and I think this is really crucial actually, warning the public not to reshare the videos that are out there. The Gender Ministry especially has urged the public to stop circulating the videos because, like I said, they have been made without the consent of the women involved. So now to Kenya, who have taken a similar approach. So they've formally condemned this. There's a manhunt framing as well. So this is the Ministry of Gender, Culture and Children has condemned this alleged conduct as technology facilitated gender-based violence and a violation of constitutional rights to dignity and privacy, and said that the relevant agencies who deal with that have been directed to act urgently and accordingly. They're also talking about cross-border cooperation, whether that's working with Russia, whether that's working with Ghana, to make sure that they can collaborate with everybody internationally across the board to catch this perpetrator. And again, that warning to the public not to reshare the videos of an intimate nature, because the women in the videos did not know that they were being filmed. And every time it's shared without their consent, then they are re-traumatized. So Ghana really foregrounding extradition and prosecution, and Kenya really pushing forward with a multi-agency international investigation with cross-border coordination. But both countries, number one, taking this very, very seriously, and number two, pushing as hard as they can to make sure the perpetrator is caught and punished.
Afua, we need to ask, this individual in question, has he been identified? While the reports say, everybody says he's a Russian man, what else do we know about him? And has there been any response, from the Russian authorities? Because we're aware that the Russian ambassador, at least in Ghana, has been, informed about this.
So the man has been informally identified online, if you will. He's known as Yatsalav, and he's described, as a Russian national, and in all the reporting around this. So that's his alias that's been circulated online. That's what he's known as. We don't have a full name for him as yet, but like I said, he's being described as Yatsalav. We don't have a confirmed real name for him. And yes, the Russian embassy have been informed about this. They have been invited for a meeting by the Ghanaian authorities. They said that they have, in quote unquote, the Russian embassy said they have taken note of media reports and the public discussion about one of their citizens involved in this non-consensual recording. So I think the fact that they have quote-unquote taken note isn't an admission or a denial of any guilt. It's more like a diplomatic acknowledgement that this has happened, and it's officially on their radar, and that perhaps they are willing to meet with Ghanaian officials as this investigation is being taken forward.
Well, Afua, just as we have actually established, and reports actually suggest that he specifically traveled to Ghana and Kenya to approach women in these malls, beaches, and also public spaces. Does that indicate a deliberate targeting of African women? What does the alleged use of the camera-equipped smart glasses tell us about premeditation?
Oh, absolutely. This seems, first of all, to the first part of your question, traveling to Ghana and Kenya, it does seem like this is targeting of African women, very much so. It's more like a playbook that he has. Perhaps he's visited these countries before, knows women there, knows what they're like. But it does feel like definitely this is targeted towards African women. Knowing that he can approach women in these public settings, knowing that perhaps they would be agreeable for private meetups, suggests that he's done his homework, that he's perhaps done reconnaissance missions and knows what women are like perhaps in these countries, and feels that perhaps they are a soft touch, or perhaps that he has a type. There's definitely premeditation there. And I think, yes, with the use of the smart glasses as well, that's definitely to me seems like premeditation. You've definitely calculated how I'm going to film surreptitiously in this way without these women knowing. And smart glasses is such an easy way to do that because they look so much like any other pair of glasses. You can wear them and film without the other person knowing. That's definitely premeditation. That's definitely a calculated move. So yes, absolutely. He's targeting African women, targeting Ghanaian and Kenyan women. Absolutely, and this is premeditated with the use of the smart glasses. And also, let's bring in the fact that he didn't tell the women what was happening to them. That absolutely tells us that he was doing this surreptitiously, illegally, knew that, because if, you know, there's people that wouldn't mind being filmed. Let's just put that on the table. There's people that would be okay with that happening. The fact that you would film these women without them knowing means that you don't care about their rights, means that he doesn't care about what they want in this, and also tells me that this was done for social media, for clicks, for likes, for sharing, and for making money.
You know, let me pick up on that, but also let me inform people that he actually answered questions from other men who were asking him about these trips to the African continent. He spoke about preferring Ghana over Kenya, that he would explain why. He spoke about how much he gave some of the women. So it's almost like he's creating a play-by-play book for other men, other Western men, or at least foreign men to monetize. But he didn't just record, as you said. He monetized the videos through paid platforms like Telegram. So how does monetization of this kind of situation, how does it change the severity of the case? And what does it mean when trauma becomes revenue, when private moments are turned into subscription content? You talked about some of this content with the women being behind a paywall. He's getting paid while these women are traumatized, while their reputations are being torn apart. It's even reported in Kenya, but we're unable to confirm, that one of the women committed suicide when the video involving her came out. So with him monetizing, with him putting it behind paywalls, what does all of this mean when somebody's trauma becomes revenue and private moments become subscription content?
I mean, first of all, the fact that he's making money from this establishes a motive. You know, when the content is behind a paywall or subscription like we've described, then the state could argue that that's sexual exploitation for money making, and not just you know, private wrongdoing, not just, oh, you know, I didn't know I was recording and I'm sorry. You know, it establishes motive. I record it and then I put it behind a paywall. That's my motive. I made money from this. So that is sexual exploitation, and that dynamic is established from the get-go. It also expands the harm. So once these videos are downloaded, reposted, mirrored, talked about, other people getting advice on how they can make their own videos, it expands the harm so much more than just this one woman who was in the video, just this one woman who has been violated in this way. I think it can also trigger stronger legal mechanisms when you have suddenly someone's making money from this. You can have the proceeds of crime argument as well. You know, you can have asset seizure. What money did he make from this? We can seize that. What did he buy with it? We can seize that as well. And I think that's very, very strong. But also, it industrializes violation. It makes violation an industry. It establishes it. It encourages other people to do it. You know, we've talked about the fact that he was giving advice to other men on perhaps how to, you know, lure in these women. That becomes an industry. Violation and gender-based violence becomes an industry. And it turns a person's moral dignity into an item that can be bought or sold.
All right, let's talk about recourse, Afua. It's reported that at least 24 women in Ghana are affected. We don't know how many there are in Kenya who are affected. And these women are now living with footage of their most intimate moments circulating globally. Their faces attached to videos they never consented to. So how do we understand now the scale of harm when the full number may still be unknown, and the recourse these women really have, if they have at all?
I don't think you can really understand the personal and psychological harm that comes with this until you're in the eye of the storm. When you think about it, you so rightly said your most intimate moments put online without your consent. Can you imagine the shame, the fear, the anxiety of perhaps your friends, perhaps a partner if you had one, your parents, your cousins, brothers, sisters, seeing these videos of you circulating online in your most private moments without your consent? And that's your private harm. That's the private personal harm. What about the economic harm? You know, if you are working for a company, this might violate a privacy policy that you might have written into your contract that you know, many of us may not even be aware of. You could lose your job. You know, the economic harm that comes with it. And then with that could come housing instability, food insecurity, if you can't provide for yourself. And then there's the permanent digital harm. This video will live forever on the internet. So this might be circulating in February and March and go away, and then you think you're getting over it. And then it pops up again in August. And then it pops up again next year. And it pops up again in 5 years' time. And you can never get rid of it. And then imagine, you know, 10 years down the line, you have a child and your child finds it and plays that video, or someone sends it to them. You know, it's there forever on the line. And that is very, very damaging.
Absolutely heartbreaking, Afua. Well, do stay with us. When we return, we will go deeper, you know, beyond one individual. This case has sparked conversations about white privilege, colonial mentality, diplomatic protection, and also impunity. Is this just one predator or a system that protects him? Please stay with us. We'll be back in a bit.
Now, this story has grown beyond allegations of secret filming. Advocacy groups argue this case reflects something larger, the intersection of race, privilege, and power. The claim is that his foreign identity and Russia's position on extradition may shield this man from accountability. Ghana has publicly stated it will pursue extradition and activate international cooperation. But questions remain about continental solidarity and global justice. Afua Hagan, News Central's senior international correspondent, is still with us as we break down this story. Now, Afua, this case has brought up so many controversial angles, and some have said he used, quote, white privilege as a weapon, unquote. So do you think that's a fair characterization, or it's an emotional response to injustice? And do you think that colonial era perceptions, where white foreigners are often seen as more trustworthy or desirable, created the conditions for easier access?
I do think that white privilege is a factor in this case. If you really break it down and look at what that means. I mean, first of all, you have the assumption that when this man is in public spaces, is perhaps he's more safe, that he's rich, that he's more respectable. So when he approached women, no one really bat an eyelid. Security or anybody around, you know, gave him a pass, gave him the white pass because he is a white man. Then you have the implication of sexual stereotyping, so the fetishization of black women. And I think that actually is really key and really central here to this case, where black women are often, or African women are often seen as a fetish by white men. And I think that definitely, you know, encouraged some of the sharing and the selling of this content behind paywalls. And so I think that is a huge part of it. And then, of course, you have the mobility aspect to this. Because of his passport, this individual was able to flee Ghana or Kenya very, very easily, where someone from Ghana or from Kenya may have issues getting a visa to go somewhere after they might have perpetrated this kind of crime. So I do think white privilege actually does play quite a huge part in this case. Yes, some might see it as an emotional response, but when you break down in reality and actuality what that means in this case, I think it played a very big part.
All right, so looking at the responses to this, Afua, many people are blaming the women. Someone asked, oh, did he force them? Another comment said, oh, stop wasting taxpayers' money on these good-for-nothing girls. And then there was another one who said, Master Sam, first let the ladies face the law for being careless and disgracing Ghana, that the guy didn't force them. In fact, that guy is a hero, rather give him an award. So there are crazy reactions like this. What do reactions like these reveal about how society views women's bodies, dignity and responsibility in cases of exploitation as this? And do we really understand what consent means? And does consent to a conversation or intimacy ever equal consent to secret filming and global distribution?
I think, first of all, lots of these responses that blame the victims are steeped in misogyny and misunderstanding of consent. If you do not tell someone that they are being filmed, then how would that person know that they are being filmed? When we have conversations about consent, I think you really have to explicitly say to someone, look, these glasses that I'm wearing are going to film you, and then you're going to end up on a paywall behind Telegram. None of those women were told that. They weren't told that. And if they were told that and consented anyway, that is their business. And that's absolutely up to them. Yeah. But they weren't told that. It ended up with their most intimate moments being shared. That is not consent. And so they are not to blame for anyone's shame for their intimate moments to end up online. They're not to blame for that because they didn't consent to it. So I think, yes, you know, there's a real conversation to be had about understanding what consent means. Am I being filmed? Am I being filmed secretly? Is that footage going to be published? Are you going to make money from it? These are conversations that, you know, weren't had with those women. I think also there's a conversation about dignity versus discipline. I think some of the cruel reactions to this have been that, you know, women's bodies exist for public judgment all the time. Public judgment and punishment. And when men would do this kind of thing, then it would be, oh, that's just boys being boys, you know, that's what men do, that's what they get up to. But when women do it, it seems as shameful, that we're lacking dignity, that we're bringing shame upon a country. And that is deeply, deeply rooted in misogyny. Deeply rooted in misogyny.
All right. Afua, what this man used when approaching the woman, you know, were camera-equipped smart glasses designed to record without detection. Now, he planned this basically, but this is not only happening in Ghana or Kenya, because men are wearing these glasses and approaching women around the world. There were glasses that were actually tested that can pull up social media handles, phone numbers, and even home addresses simply by scanning someone's face. This is a prime example of technology-facilitated gender-based violence. Does this case expose weaknesses in how African countries regulate technology-facilitated sexual abuse? Are we even ready for where technology is taking us?
I don't think any country, whether that's on the continent of Africa or anywhere, is really ready for where this kind of technology can take us. We've had cases here in the United Kingdom of women being surreptitiously filmed with these glasses in different encounters, whether that's out and about in the street, getting into a lift, and then that's being shared online. And then we'll come across herself in a video that she didn't consent to being taken. You know, the fact that you can have these glasses that can look at, you know, me or you and suddenly pull up all these details about me, we don't know the level of that AI and that technology, where it can take people, what it is useful for. It's Big Brother gone a step too far. You know, facial recognition technology has long been controversial, and that is tied in with the filming that these glasses can do. You also have that facial recognition technology as part of that. I think nobody is ready across the world, any country is ready for this technology, for how it's being used, and for how far it can go. And I think it's about time that governments around the world, not just in Africa, but across the world, really get a handle on the fact that this type of technology exists, what does it exist for, and how can it benefit society? There's no point in having AI and tech that exists just because. Just because you can film someone and use facial recognition technology and pull up all those details instantly doesn't mean that you should. Yeah. Doesn't mean that everybody should have access to that level of technology. So I don't think any government around the world is ready for this kind of tech.
Afua, in reading about this case, I found out that the saga is viewed by sociologists as part of a disturbing African casting trend, a form of digital neocolonialism where African bodies are harvested as content for global paywalls. Different parts of the continent are reporting similar patterns of predatory content. In South Africa, the government has investigated recruitment schemes luring women into exploitative conditions under the guise of international careers. This incident suggests that Africa has become a primary target for digital predators who exploit gaps in local law enforcement and use offshore platforms like Telegram to host unregulated exploitative content. So at what point do we stop treating these isolated cases and start confronting them as, a coordinated transnational system of exploitation? How long can this continue before we admit that digital exploitation has become, the newest form of colonial extraction?
I think the fact that the same playbook is being used over and over again, whether it's a surreptitious filming, whether it's, like you said, African bodies harvested as content, distributed to audiences worldwide, often behind a paywall, with someone who is not African who is filming it, making money from that. This same playbook is being repeated over and over again. And I think this is a point where we have to realize that this is not isolated, that not only is this a pattern, it's a money-making scheme. And so the response by governments, by policy, has to be transnational. So you need to have coordination across the entire continent of Africa. We've spoken about Ghana and Kenya, and they've spoken about cross-border and transnational cooperation on this case. This needs to happen across the entire continent. So you can share and coordinate on cyber evidence, and so there can be a rapid response. You also have to have pressure on the platforms, on the social media platforms, and on the advertising, on the different apps, to make sure that they know that this is happening and to try and clamp down on it. But we know that that's not beneficial for them. They want to continue making as much money as possible. And clamping down on harmful content is not something that social media platforms like to do or are good at doing. You also need to have joint investigations across the continent by different law enforcement agencies and governments. But it's also really about a cultural reset, right? A real reset in everybody's minds that this image-based sexual abuse is gender-based violence, isn't just us sharing content that we might find amusing or funny, that it is sexual abuse, it's gender-based violence, and it needs to stop.
Afua, thank you so much for joining us. This is a conversation that we're following very closely, just as we know you are, and it's one that we'll continue to keep our close eye on.